Welcome back to my channel, guys. So just to recap where we left off, Chioma signed a life-changing contract at nearly 3 in the morning, got on a private jet with a man who's made tormenting her his personal hobby, and they're now flying to Singapore, so she can carry Park Lee's child. A Korean mafia boss and a Nigerian woman who can barely stand each other, trapped in the most complicated arrangement imaginable. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed yet, please do that now. This story is about to get so much more intense, and if you missed the previous episodes, kindly go to the channel and watch it. Hit that subscribe button right now, turn on notifications, and let's dive into the chaos that is episode 3. Singapore sprawled beneath them like jewelry scattered across black velvet, all gleaming towers and ribbons of light cutting through the tropical darkness. The city looked impossibly clean from this height, impossibly ordered. Nothing like the chaos Chioma felt churning in her chest as the plane descended. Park Lee had arranged everything with the precision she'd come to expect from him. No main terminal, no customs lines where photographers might lurk. Instead, they landed at a private facility and were ushered directly into a waiting car with windows tinted so dark that the outside world became nothing more than suggestions of light and shadow. The fertility clinic sat in one of Singapore's most exclusive medical districts, the kind of building that didn't advertise its services because the people who needed to know about it already did. They entered through a side entrance, away from the main lobby, with its uncomfortable chairs and curious eyes. A private elevator carried them directly to the top floor where Dr. Zachary Chen, a Singaporean fertility specialist with an international reputation and a client list that read like a who's who of Asian billionaires, waited in an office that looked more like a luxury hotel suite than a medical facility. The doctor was younger than Chioma expected, maybe early 40s, with kind eyes behind designer frames and the sort of calm demeanor that came from years of handling anxious patients and their complicated situations. He greeted Park Lee with the easy familiarity of someone who'd worked with him before, then turned to Chioma with a warm, professional smile that made her feel slightly less like a walking incubator. "Please have a seat," Dr. Chen said, gesturing to the plush chairs arranged around his desk. "I understand this is your first surrogacy arrangement, Miss Peters, so I want to make sure you understand every step of the process." Chioma sat, acutely aware of Park Lee settling into the chair beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, that expensive scent that probably cost more than her previous monthly salary. Dr. Chen pulled up a presentation on his tablet, but before he could begin, Park Lee leaned forward, his voice dropping into that tone he used when issuing commands rather than making requests. "Everything must be absolutely discreet," he said, his eyes fixed on the doctor with an intensity that would have made most people uncomfortable. "I don't care about the cost. No information leaves this office, no records get misplaced, no staff members develop loose tongues. Are we clear?" Dr. Chen nodded without the slightest hint of offense. He'd clearly dealt with powerful, paranoid clients before. "Of course, Mr. Park. Patient confidentiality is our highest priority. However, I do need to explain the medical realities to Miss Peters. She'll require hormone treatments to prepare her body for the embryo transfer. Daily injections for approximately 2 weeks, close monitoring of her hormone levels, and strict rest protocols." Chioma's stomach dropped. "Hormone injections? Daily?" She tried to keep her voice steady when she asked, "What are the side effects?" The doctor's expression became more serious. "Fatigue is common. Dizziness, sometimes severe. Nausea, headaches, mood fluctuations. Some patients experience fainting episodes, though we'll monitor you closely to minimize that risk. Your body will essentially be tricked into believing it's preparing for pregnancy, which means significant hormonal changes in a compressed time frame." Her chest tightened. She'd known this wouldn't be easy, but hearing it laid out in clinical detail made it viscerally real in a way the contract negotiations hadn't. She glanced at Park Lee, looking for some reaction, some acknowledgement that he understood what he was asking her body to endure. For just a second, something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been concern or possibly guilt. But it vanished so quickly, she might have imagined it. "You'll endure it," he said, his voice cold but somehow also reassuring in its certainty. "You signed up for this, Miss Peters. Walking away isn't an option anymore. You've seen too much of my operation, too many details of my private arrangements. Until this procedure is successful and the child is born, you belong to me. Your health, your schedule, your decisions, they're all mine to control. Chioma's head snapped toward him, anger flaring hot and immediate. Excuse me? I don't belong to anyone. I'm not your possession. A small, infuriating smile tugged at his lips. Until the procedure is successful and the pregnancy is confirmed viable, every significant decision about your health and well-being falls under my authority. That's in the contract you signed. Don't fight it, Miss Peters. You agreed to this. Dr. Chen glanced nervously between them, clearly recognizing the beginning of an argument he wanted no part of. He quickly excused himself, muttering something about preparing the treatment room, and practically fled his own office. The moment the door clicked shut, Chioma stood, her eyes flashing with barely controlled fury. You're absolutely unbelievable. You actually think you can just control every aspect of my life? That I'm supposed to just obey your every command like some kind of employee? Park Lee rose as well, and suddenly the spacious office felt very small. He had a way of filling spaces when he wanted to, of making his presence overwhelm everything else. Control? No, I am protecting what's mine. If you collapse halfway through this because you decided to ignore medical advice or sneak out for adventures, this entire arrangement falls apart. My investment, my future heir, my carefully constructed plans, all of it depends on you staying healthy and following protocols. So yes, Miss Peters. From now until the moment my child is safely born, you follow my rules without argument. Minutes later, they stepped into the elevator together, the air between them still crackling with tension. As the door slid shut, sealing them in the small chrome and mirror box, Park Lee spoke without looking at her, his eyes fixed on the descending floor numbers. This arrangement stays strictly between us, the agency, the clinic staff who've all signed NDAs, and no one else. If anyone discovers the truth, if any reporter connects the rights, it won't just be my name splashed across headlines. You understand that? Chioma crossed her arms, staring at her reflection in the polished elevator doors. I know how to keep my mouth shut. He finally glanced at her, and that insufferable knowing smile played at his lips. You're very loud when you're feeling brave, and remarkably quiet when you're actually scared. I've noticed the pattern. For 1 second, his mouth almost curved into something resembling a genuine smile. Almost. Then the elevator chimed, announcing their arrival at the private underground garage. The door slid open, and they stepped out into the concrete space where their car waited. And that's when it happened. Flash. Flash. 2 camera flashes exploded in their faces, bright and disorienting, gone almost before Chioma could process what was happening. A motor scooter, parked between 2 luxury cars, roared to life. The photographer, face hidden behind a helmet and camera, peeled away into the Singapore traffic before Park Lee could even react. Inside the car. Now. His voice had gone flat, all traces of their earlier banter erased. This was Park Lee in crisis mode, the man who'd built a criminal empire through quick thinking and ruthless action. Chioma's heart raced as she dove into the vehicle. Who was that? How did they find us? A problem, he said shortly, already pulling out his phone. By the time they reached his Singapore penthouse, he'd made 7 calls in rapid Korean, each more threatening than the last. By evening, the headline had erupted across Korean entertainment news sites and gossip blogs. Billionaire Park Lee spotted with unknown woman at private Singapore clinic. What is the notorious CEO hiding? The article was pure speculation, no real facts, just questions designed to generate clicks and stoke curiosity. But it was enough to make Chioma's phone explode with messages from people who usually forgot she existed. Old classmates from Lagos, former co-workers from the hotel, even her cousin in Abuja who never called, all suddenly desperate to know what she was doing in Singapore with one of Korea's most powerful men. Park Lee took the phone from her shaking hands, turned it face down on the coffee table, and met her panicked gaze with infuriating calm. No doom scrolling. No reading comments. No responding to messages. As long as they don't know who you are specifically, don't have your name or your face clearly visible, this story dies in 2 days. 3 maximum. And if it doesn't die? Chioma asked, hearing the tremor in her own voice. Then I bury it, he said simply. I bury the story, the photographer, the publications that run it, and anyone who tries to dig deeper. I have people who specialize in making problems disappear, Miss Peters. This is what they do." The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it reminded her exactly who she was dealing with. A man with the resources and ruthlessness to erase people from public consciousness. Possibly from consciousness entirely. Days later, Chioma sat on the examination table in the clinic's treatment room, her sleeve rolled up, watching the nurse prepare the syringe with growing dread. She'd always hated needles, that sharp sting of invasion, the feeling of something foreign entering her body. She winced even before the needle touched her skin, squeezing her eyes shut. "Do they really have to do this every single time?" she asked, aiming for brave, but landing somewhere near terrified. A shadow fell across her face. She opened her eyes to find Park Lee standing beside the examination table, close enough to touch. His expression was unreadable, somewhere between annoyed and concerned. "Stop making a scene," he said, his voice low but firm. "It's just an injection. You're not dying." She shot him a glare hot enough to melt steel. "Easy for you to say. You're not the one getting stabbed repeatedly for someone else's genetic legacy." But when the needle pierced her skin, her hand instinctively shot out and grabbed his wrist, fingers wrapping around expensive watch and warm skin without permission or apology. For a moment, he froze completely. She felt the tension in his arm, his instinct to pull away from unexpected physical contact. But he didn't move. Instead, his hand shifted, turning until his palm covered hers, steady and surprisingly warm. "It'll be over in 5 seconds, he said quietly. "Stop being so dramatic about basic medical procedures." Her eyes opened, meeting his. This close, she could see the individual lashes framing those dark eyes, could see the faint scar near his left eyebrow that she'd never noticed before. And for the first time since this insane arrangement began, she caught a genuine flicker of concern beneath all that arrogance and control. When the injection finished, she exhaled shakily, her grip on his wrist loosening. "Easy for you to say," she muttered. "You're not the one whose body is being chemically manipulated." The second injection burned worse than the first, a deep ache spreading from the injection site through her arm. The treatment room tilted once, then twice. Her vision swam. Her knees weakened. His hand was suddenly there, steady and warm against her shoulder, catching her before she could fall. "Breathe," he commanded quietly, his voice close to her ear. "Count with me."
3, 2, 1.
"Don't be nice to me," she managed through gritted teeth. "It confuses my entire nervous system when you act human." "Noted. I'll be awful later to compensate."
Can you stand now?
Her phone, sitting on the side table, buzzed with an incoming message. Then another. Then a cascade of notifications, a thread of question marks from people who'd ignored her existence until they smelled scandal. "They're already asking questions," she said weakly, watching her phone screen light up repeatedly. "People I haven't talked to in years suddenly want to know where I am and who I'm with." "Let them wonder," Park Lee said, guiding her to sit back down on the examination table. "Wondering won't kill them. Answers might kill you." Back at his Singapore penthouse, a sprawling luxury apartment that occupied the entire top floor of one of the city's most exclusive residential towers, life became a complicated dance of proximity and avoidance. They shared space but not lives, existed in the same rooms but maintained careful distances, spoke to each other in exchanges that somehow managed to be both intimate and completely impersonal. At breakfast, he criticized the way she poured milk into her cereal. "You eat like a child. And you brewed like a bitter old man who forgot how to enjoy anything," she shot back. When she tried to slip downstairs for fresh air and a change of scenery, he stopped her at the door, his body blocking her exit. No unnecessary stress. No late nights wandering Singapore. No distractions that might compromise the treatment protocols. "You're not my father," she said, trying to step around him. He didn't move. "No, I'm significantly worse. I'm the man whose entire future depends on your body successfully carrying my child to term. My control over your schedule isn't personal, Miss Peters. It's practical. And yet, When she fell asleep on the living room couch one afternoon after an exhausting round of appointments and injections, she woke hours later to find a cashmere blanket draped carefully over her. Park Lee sat across the room at his desk, apparently absorbed in his laptop, giving no indication that he'd been the one to cover her. Neither of them mentioned it. Neither acknowledged the small gesture of consideration. One evening, after another brutal round of hormone injections left her dizzy and nauseous, Chioma escaped to the penthouse balcony. The Singapore skyline stretched before her, all gleaming towers and possibility, so different from Seoul's mountains and Seoul's complications. She gripped the railing, breathing deeply, trying to settle her rebelling stomach. Park Lee joined her after a few minutes, his presence heavy and undeniable beside her. They stood in silence, watching lights flicker across the city below. Finally, without looking at her, he spoke. "You're stronger than I expected," he said quietly.
Most people would have broken by now.
"Most people aren't desperate enough to deal with you," she replied. The next morning, everything changed. Chioma was walking down the hallway toward the kitchen when the world simply tilted sideways. Her vision blurred. Her legs stopped obeying commands. She felt herself falling, the marble floor rushing up to meet her, and then suddenly there were arms around her, catching her before impact. Park Lee had materialized from somewhere, his grip firm and sure, one arm behind her back and the other beneath her knees. Their faces were suddenly inches apart. She could feel his breath, could see the concern flash across his usually controlled features. His voice dropped to something softer than she'd ever heard from him. "Be careful," he said, almost whispering. "You're not allowed to break. Not yet. Not when we're this close." Chioma pulled away as soon as her legs would support her weight, her cheeks burning with embarrassment and something else she refused to examine. "Stop acting like you actually care about me as a person." His expression shifted back to that infuriating smirk, the mask sliding firmly back into place. "I don't care about you, Miss Peters. I'm protecting my investment. There's a difference." But as she walked unsteadily toward her room, she felt his eyes following her. When she glanced back, she caught something in his gaze, something unspoken and complicated burning there before he looked away. At their final hospital visit that week, Dr. Chen's smile was gentle and professional. "The embryo transfer went perfectly," he said, looking between them. "The technical procedure was textbook. Now comes the difficult part, the waiting." Chioma's heart pounded in her chest, loud enough that she was sure everyone in the room could hear it. "Wait for what?" "In approximately 10 days, we'll perform a blood test to determine if the embryo has successfully implanted," Dr. Chen explained. "If the results are positive, you're pregnant. If not, we can attempt another transfer after your body has recovered." Chioma's breath caught in her throat. 10 days to know if her body had accepted this foreign presence, if Park Lee's genetic legacy had found purchase in her womb, if the next 9 months of her life were really happening. She looked at Park Lee, found him already watching her, his expression completely unreadable for once. Neither of them had a witty comeback. Neither of them knew what to say. They stepped into the elevator together, the silence between them charged with everything they weren't saying. As the door slid shut, Park Lee leaned in close enough that she felt his breath brush against her ear. 9 months of you in my life," he murmured. 9 months of your attitude and your stubbornness and your complete inability to follow simple instructions. Sounds like absolute hell. Chioma turned her face toward him, their eyes meeting at dangerous proximity, steady and unblinking. "Then brace yourself," she replied quietly. "Because if I'm pregnant, you're about to discover just how stubborn an Igbo woman can be when she's carrying someone else's future." The elevator descended, carrying them back down to ground level, back to their complicated arrangement, back to the 10 days of waiting that would determine everything. And neither of them mentioned that they were still standing closer than necessary. Neither acknowledged that neither had moved away. So that's where we're leaving them. 10 days until they know if Chioma is pregnant with Park Lee's child. 10 days of living together in that Singapore penthouse, trapped between what they are and what they might become. If you think the tension is thick now, just wait until next episode when the test results come back and everything changes again. Make sure you're subscribed because you absolutely do not want to miss what happens next. Drop a comment telling me if you think they're actually starting to care about each other or if it's still just business and survival. I'll see you in episode 4 where the real complications begin. Until then, comment and rate this episode on a scale of 1 to 10. To be continued.